Hi there, my name is Kevin Terbeek, I go by American Elephant, and I'm a 2D digital animator and illustrator. Earlier this year I uploaded Place for Us, a fan animation based on the second season of Cartoon Network's Infinity Train. Its release was timed with the season's 5th anniversary on January 6th this year, and since then, because this project took me over 8 months of my life to work on, while I was also making other videos and finishing my online Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design student experience,
of which I graduated, bitches!
I've wanted to make a behind-the-scenes video showing how I made it. The only thing left to note is that this video will not explain what Infinity Train is as a show, so just be aware of that as we go. This isn't really made for newbies to the Infinity Train franchise, series, if you will, whatever works for you. Without further ado, this is the making of The story begins in April 2024, around the time I learned when Book 2's 5th anniversary was going to be. Given it was my favorite season of this show, as well as one of my new favorite animated seasons of television ever made, I wanted to make something special that took place after Book 2 and focused on the popular fanship of Jess Lake, because I ship them really badly, and if you can't see why I and others do, you're either insane or haven't watched the show. And I realized that while I was making animations for school, I wasn't making anything outside of class regularly, or nothing that lasted for more than a week, or a few at most. So I saw this as a great opportunity to make something personal to me and test my skills as an animator outside of a school setting. So I opened up a project folder in Toon Boom Harmony Premium 22, chose to make it a music video, selected my music, in this case, A Place for Us by Fitz and the Tantrums, a song which I felt had lyrics that fit with aspects of Book 2's story, that was made by a band I've already quite liked, and began the daunting task of completing a 3-minute and 23-second, i.e. 5,070 frame long animation by January, while again, making multiple video essays and getting close to graduating. Let's get started. Now, typically when making an animated shot or sequence, the process in the industry, even though I'm independent, goes like this. If it's a shot, you typically start with thumbnails or storyboards if you already have those on hand. Then you go to rough animation after using those thumbnails for blocking. Then cleanup, which is separate from but includes other things in the process like coloring, inking, compositing, etc. Whatever else you need to get done to make the animation look complete, that's the cleanup stage, basically. However, for this project, I decided to essentially do thumbnailing, storyboarding, and making an animatic all at once for the sake of saving time, with some portions being practically fully animated. That's why I call this the sketch animation phase of the project, where I used blue line art for characters, grays and silvers for backgrounds, and green for effects. On the subject of unconventional approaches, two things. One, I did all of this in one project folder, which is generally not recommended, since animators usually do individual shots per file since they're working on a larger project with multiple people, not the whole thing, and as a result, the bigger the file, the more likely Toon Boom is to slow down, especially if you don't render your frames. And two, I did not use X sheets. If you don't know what those are, exposure sheets are columned pieces of paper that help animators break down individual parts of shots to animate, including mouth-shaped sounds called phonemes. I like X sheets conceptually, and I totally see their value, but I found them more time-consuming than I hoped they'd be when I did them in class, and I prefer playing back the audio on the timeline and looking at audio waves, or using the placement of certain keyframes to indicate my timing. It's just how I roll, likely because I love doing perfect close-up editing when it comes to Premiere Pro, especially if it means adding in memes. Like so. Oh!
Chicken sandwich.
Excuse me, damn. Other than those unconventional elements, there's not too much else to say about this phase, other than I wanted to immediately start getting a cute, safe, basically fluff fanfiction vibe between Lake and Jesse. I didn't have a script, but I was planning the scenes out in my head for weeks and made a rough list around the halfway point just to make sure I would stay on track with completing the sketch process. It was fun figuring out how to convey the right emotions through limited dot eyes, something I've done before and had a lot of fun with. And in some areas, I got experimental, setting up shots that were fun to work on, but also ambitious for me to do on my own, and shot types that I had never animated before in a single project, academic or personal. And after I completed the sketch animation phase around the middle or end of June, shortly thereafter began Next up, rough animation. This is where I started looking at models of Lake and Jesse from the show to start drawing them more accurately. It, of course, had a learning curve, and Jesse in particular took a little more getting used to drawing since he was significantly more detailed with all the stuff on his clothing and his hair, especially compared to my post-train interpretation of Lake's familiar but new clothing. I also didn't do rough animation for the backgrounds since I took a different approach to them that I'll explain later, and by the time I was getting into rough animation, another thing that I forgot to add that is typical when you're animating a project is frame numbers. But I had drawing substitutions in a side window thanks to Toon Boom Harmony Premium, so it wasn't like a big deal and I didn't get too lost, thankfully. However, I still had a great time working on this part of the process, and chipping away at this only to play back the footage to see how it looked was thankfully quelling my doubts about how well I could animate characters on my own without class instruction, especially when I got to Lake's spin and throw. That was one of my favorite things to rough animate. Speaking of Lake, I originally considered giving her slightly grown out hair like I did in this little snippet of my Valentine's Day Jess Lake fan art for the year, you know, to show the passage of time. But on top of being used to just drawing bald or buzz cut heads more, I like what her short hair symbolizes for her character beyond me being, you know, a buzz cut enthusiast. In the show, cutting her hair is shown as her choice and a visual severing between her and Tulip. Thus, I felt like keeping it that way was important. It's just what she likes, and it means something to her in terms of being her own person, that she chooses to keep her hair cut. Though shout out to that great piece of crew fan art where she and Jesse meet Tulip and she has slightly grown out hair. I love that. This take on her design, though, does keep her boots from the show, but this time she has newer, more comfy dark gray pants and a new black shirt with blue sleeve rings on the arms, to contrast the red neck border of Jesse's shirt. And also to give Lake the color blue as a theme, since Jesse has yellow with his jacket, and the two colors obviously make green, aka the show's most important color. She is, however, missing her beaded bracelet, which I just forgot to add and was too far in to add when I realized I hadn't. And she also has no hair needles. My made-up interpretation of this decision to exclude them was that this version of Lake has softened. She's much more relaxed, much more comfortable. She's not being hunted anymore. Thus, this is reflected in her character design, with her having more smoothed out edges and curves in it. But the actual reason they aren't there is just because I didn't want to draw them.
It's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
One shot I have to shout out is the one where Lake puts her hand on her head in a state of blushing happiness. I love how cute I drew that shot as is, but it was also an important one in the process because it was the first time in the rough animation stage I realized I drew her without looking at the model, that I was finally used to drawing these characters off of muscle memory a little bit. And this was a great feeling to have because when I started in school, I struggled with being on model. The pressure when I was starting out to draw accurately and cleanly weighed on me so much at first that while I drew clean animations, it restricted any experimentation I could have done with character models. It restricted my attempts to draw, squash, and stretch, which is obviously not a good thing, as that's one of the 12 principles of animation that you need to learn to be good at the medium. During this time, I was under the mindset that drawing sketches before doing any cleanup would be too time-consuming for assignments, since I only had a week to finish them most of the time, and I was doing other classes at the same time, which ate into more time that I had. But now, I can tell you that this is not the case. In fact, making those bases, no matter how messy, whether you're just doing a drawing or a full animation, makes, at the very least in my experience, it makes my work go faster and it makes it so much easier. And if you need proof, I drew this Goju Wolf fan art a few weeks ago in less than 24 hours based off one sketch layer. What can I say? I've gotten better. Also, if you watch Infinity Train, like just the actual show, which I obviously did rewatch clips and look at screenshots for reference, you'll notice that the characters aren't always drawn perfectly or consistent with the model sheet. Look at this shot of Jesse and Lake. Now look at this shot, or this shot. Notice anything different in their head proportions or shapes? That's because these designs are on model, but they look slightly different because they're drawn by different members of the Infinity Train staff, with different styles, which is much more common in cartoons than you might think, especially for Cartoon Network. It's still accurate, it's just not 100% accurate. The point is, even professionals aren't always 100% on model, and the only way you can clean up to get to that point is to make a mess of things in the first place. So if you are new to art or animation, make messy sketches. At least in my experience, it helps you create better art at a quicker pace, and it will go faster than you think if you keep at it. Speaking of rough shots though, this shot of Jesse being confused by the speaker not turning on has major significance for the animation at this stage, because this rough animation shot was where I thought I would lose access to the entire project. Picture this. September 3rd, 2024. It's a rainy afternoon. I'm rough animating while listening to behind the scenes info on the making of Atlantis: The Lost Empire, and my computer crashes. Now, crashing was nothing new. I dealt with that before. I am a Windows user after all. But when I tried to reopen the project, not only was the recently opened queue in the Toon Boom pop-up box clear, odd, though even then I wasn't 100% surprised by that because that was the second time it had happened within 2 weeks. But when I tried manually reopening it through File Explorer by going to the project folder and clicking on the X-Stage file, it was gone. Like, the X-Stage file was just gone. The only thing left was this paper file, and one with a tilde in its file naming convention. Odd, right? For the rest of the afternoon, I was genuinely worried because even though I had contacted Toon Boom support for help, it took time to get a response, and even if I got access back, I only thought, how long would it be until I did, and how much time would I lose to keep making progress on this? But then, thank the gods, at around 10:40 at night, with help from my dad, we figured it out. Finally. We opened this paper file in Notepad. We clicked File, Save As, typed in the project folder name, and typed .xstage at the end of it, and it worked. Finally! The X-Stage access point to the project, which thankfully had not lost any assets, worked, and it was restored, and thank 1-1, because had I lost access, I would have lost my mind. So if for whatever reason your Toon Boom Harmony project folder crashes and your X-Stage file is just gone, open the paper file. If it is there, save it as the project name .xstage, and hopefully you'll get access back. I wish I had done this sooner so I could have completed more of the shot that night, but what's important is the issue was solved and I ran into no other technical complications again, other than the occasional crashes. But again, I'm a Windows user, so I'm just used to that. I will admit though, toward the end of the rough animation stage, I was getting tired. Not of the animation itself, but working on it. The amount of drawing I did to get it done this stage by the end of September was hefty in the final days, and I felt a bit of a disconnect because I was only halfway through my second to last fall term that semester, so I didn't feel a sense of completion even as I finished the rough stage. I was finishing one thing but only halfway through another, so I didn't feel like the complete rewarding sense of I did it by the end of the month. Also, back pain. Lots of back pain. In fact, if I may, this is a great exercise if you need to stretch your back. Push your hands against the wall like this. Push like your shoulders back. Look up and take like 5 or 10 deep breaths. It's not perfect. It doesn't make it all go away, but it's worked great for me on some days, and I think I'm going to do it now for a minute because my back is starting to get a little sore from recording this. Fortunately, I had a lot of great YouTube videos and series that I could listen to or watch while working on this project, and big shout out to Kishiryu Sentai Ryu Soldier, which I finished as I was finishing the rough animation. So yeah, my work was still rough, but that was the point. It was in great shape. And around that time, I was beginning to experiment on background construction as well, which became incredibly important as it allowed me to get work done in advance for... Here we go, the final stage of production, the cleanup stage, where I did nice line art, colorful backgrounds, colored the characters by using the eyedropper tool to sample the exact shades from the screenshots and models I got, added effects, and tweaked the animation with keyframes to enhance the great work I had already done. For the backgrounds, I created them utilizing a painting approach and used various Toon Boom Harmony brush assets present in the software already. If I wasn't getting exactly what I wanted, I'd just tweak some opacity and size settings or experiment with layering different brush strokes or blotches or types of brushes on top of each other. Doing this was a lot of fun and rewarding because as someone who struggled heavily with layout and school and background construction, it felt good making pretty nicely colored environments that aimed to capture a look similar to the show, or in some cases, recreate locations directly from the show. They're not perfect, but they turned out better than I expected. And when it came to colors, I utilized various reference images from either the show or Arizona landscapes at sunset and nighttime to create 3 to 4 types of sky variation in the final shots. However, unlike the character line art and coloring, which I did with smoother vector lines that have anchor points for manipulation when you draw them, I used bitmap for the backgrounds, same as my drawing software Autodesk Sketchbook, since bitmap in Toon Boom, while you can't lock a color palette when working on those layers, you can choose whatever colors you want to draw with more freely through the eyedropper tool and color wheel in the software. Speaking of characters, here is where I finally got the hang of drawing Jesse and Lake more accurately, and where I finally got good at properly coloring vector layers. Oh my god, that is a story for another day, because it annoys the hell out of me every time I think about it. I also made multiple palettes for the different settings, given the lighting changes, and since I couldn't use multiple palette folders without affecting all the character colors throughout the entire animation at once, I made 2 separate palette folders, then just copied their colors back into the main one. That way I could just scroll through all my color options at once and choose different colors for different shots and scenes without affecting the colors of the characters for the entire animation. Speaking of, it's finally time to talk about easily the most complex shot of the animation, the run. The run is what I call this shot, where Jesse and Lake, holding hands and microphones, run all over the place and head up to a mountainside as the environment around them changes to match locations in the show. Originally, I wasn't going to have the glitching effect transitioning between the locations, and the two were just going to run along the river shore instead of the wasteland in the sketch animation stage, but I like this change much more as it lets us cover more locations as tribute to the season's episode locations, and it was just easier to animate. In fact, the only car from Season 2 that doesn't make a cameo appearance through either a background or gets represented by a character from that car in the fireworks shot is the mall car, since I associate it more with the Apex and Season 3. And to me, it also makes sense because this is supposed to be a moment where Jesse and Lake are celebrating Jesse's birthday and the next step they're about to take in their relationship, and they're trying to have happy memories as they sing. Why would they think back on a car where they were separated and almost killed in a way that didn't end happily or help them along somehow? However, I do still have a reference to the car where after the Flex are swatted and killed, you can briefly see a crossed out, glitchy Apex logo on screen when Jesse and Lake clasp their hands together. Almost like a final FU to Grace and Simon, since that's where they tried to tear them apart. But things have changed, obviously, since then, and these two are still together. Anywho, back to the run. This shot was complex for multiple reasons, chief among them being the backgrounds. See, with digital 2D animation, to convey a sense of depth, you can either draw a character moving around from multiple angles like you would on paper, or use camera layers to convey panning, cutting, keyframe movement, etc. For this shot, I did both, but not in the way you may think. Because with the exception of the zooms back at the beginning to make the transition from the previous shot feel a little more natural since there is a cut there, there is not a single camera keyframe on the run. What? Every movement of Jesse and Lake that goes all over the place was drawn by my hand on different sections of the shot and different corners, same as the train tracks and the flower, from the sketch phase to the rough animation phase and finally the cleanup phase. There are no keyframes moving Lake or Jesse and no camera keys following their drawings. And if there are any keys on the characters, it's in very subtle ways to make the movement a little more, natural with the stop motion elements moving at the same time. But then how are the backgrounds zooming back, you ask? Great question, here's the answer. I didn't keyframe the camera to move. but I keyframed the backgrounds group along with the ocean and the ship in this part on screen, and moved that group all over the place with stop motion keyframes so their choppy cutting matched the on-threes movement and timing of Lake and Jesse. Pretty cool for someone who did this on their own, right? This was insanely satisfying to put together, even though it was a chore to figure out. But I will say, if there is one thing I could do differently, it would be zooming out the backgrounds, or at least constructing them in advance before zooming out, and here's why. Something I learned about bitmap layers in Toon Boom is that, again, when a layer is bitmap, it means your art will have pixelated edges, and those edges become more apparent when zoomed in. So when I was zooming out, or like setting up a shot and zooming in on already drawn pixelated backgrounds, it made them look like they were 8-bit or from a video game in the cleanup stage, especially with the flowers. Also, when you expand the bitmap drawing space in Toon Boom Harmony, another fun fact, you're not giving yourself more canvas pixel space to draw, you're expanding the pixel space already there. It is finite and you are stretching it. So instead of drawing at a regular size, the pixels appear bigger because you expanded your canvas view, not the canvas itself. Hopefully that makes sense, but TLDR, despite its faults and one animation error you can spot if you look at the final wasteland shot compared to the video thumbnail. I'll give you a hint, it involves a color card. Before we get started.
Oh.
This was obviously ambitious for me to do on my own. It took 3 weeks of my life to complete, going off all stages, but I love the final result. Now, here's some other fun facts about cleanup before I begin closing out the video. The shot where Lake sings as the camera goes around her while pulling back has changing backgrounds to convey the sense of motion that, if I'm correct, I'm pretty sure I drew in one day. The birthday card, if you look close enough, has crossed out backwards writing because I don't know where this is from or if this is from the show, and I just don't remember. Even if it's not, I love the idea that Lake's initial is written backwards as a mirror person, and she has to get used to writing the other way. So you see crossed out mirrored writing. This shot where Jesse and Lake dance in the forest of the family tree car was supposed to take place on one of the branches inside of the tree, surrounded by leaves and shade. But on top of being harder to draw than I expected, I realized it made more sense to have the first place they met, especially in this romantic context, as well as where they befriended Alan Dracula, and where Lake first truly felt safe because there were no reflections. You know, it felt more important for that to be represented in the montage of locations that I show. In this panning shot, as Jesse sings, Lake originally walks over to Jesse, but it looked too quick and weird in the rough animation stage, especially for Lake, since her chrome weight is a big part of her character design and movement in the show. So I changed it to a quick hop over where you get a sense of weight, but you can tell Lake is like light on her feet and having fun. The flecks were originally just shadowy silhouettes, but they blended too much into the final number card background, so I drew the characters more on model and expressive with that same sharp white outline I did the birthday card, while keeping them black masses to showcase that they're still just shadows of the past. They're vivid in our memories, but they can't hurt Lake anymore. And yes, if you slow down, you can see that I have them break apart the same way they are killed. In this case, Mace cut in half while being grinded alive, and Sieve just blowing up. Speaking of this shot, I was originally worried that Lake and Jesse's hands colliding this fast would realistically mean Jesse's bones are shattered by Lake's strength. But if you remember, there is a shot in episode 4 where they quickly high-five each other, and a shot in episode 10 where they hug, and neither of which show Jesse in pain from quickly contacting Lake's skin, so I think it's fine. The cliffside kiss shot is the longest shot in the animation and has a lot of little details I loved adding over time. On top of how much I love this night sky blue with the stars that helps their blue shades pop instead of overwhelming them, you can also see I added little gulps for Lake when she's about to keep singing, because, you know, she's been singing but needs to refresh her throat, which is enhanced by this little regrip as Jesse's face gets closer. And speaking of, Jesse gets a gulp when he's about to kiss her. It's such a little detail, but it makes the shot feel so much more alive. These little things like sneezing and fidgeting can be frowned upon sometimes in live action or stage production because, you know, even though they're realistic, they're not interesting for a scene unless you specifically build a character with those little things in mind, where it is important to pay attention to those things. But in animation, these quirks and movements make the characters feel more alive, especially here, since it shows how anxious but excited the two are and how in love with each other they are. The fireworks shot, of course, not only features more individually drawn backgrounds for a panning up movement, but also has cameos from characters that arguably gave Jesse and Lake's journey the most positive impact, while referencing multiple Book 2 episodes and Cars. In this case, Jesse's brother Nate.
Hi, I'm Nate.
The Toad.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
Sachet.
Is this purple? This feels like a purple to me.
And of course, Tulip Olsen, since even though she's not in this season or shown beyond a passenger list tablet cameo from 1-1, she was MT's prime, and if not for her, she would be stuck in the mirror world. She's her own person, but narratively for us, there is no MT without Tulip, there is no Book 2 without Book 1, and Tulip, when you exclude 1-1, is the face of Infinity Train. So I had to include her here somehow, because we literally don't have one of my favorite seasons of television without the first. By the way, if you want my opinions on the other seasons, Book 1 is great, even though I haven't seen it in a minute. Book 3 is fantastic, but it is also emotionally draining. Like, oh my gosh. Like, again, love Book 3. I am not rewatching it anytime soon. And then Book 4, while I do think it is the weakest of the seasons, it is mostly by default. It suffers from what I'm gonna call Kung Fu Panda 3 syndrome, where it still clearly works. It's just, you know, the previous stuff was so good that by comparison, this one doesn't feel like, at least for me, it has the same punch or connection. But it still works. I like Ryan and Minky's relationship. I liked this idea of a prequel set in a different time period. And I like Kez. It's always fun to see Eileen's voice actress. Or I guess hear her.
Why did you flirt with the cat?
I don't know, man. She was kind of hot.
And of course, to close out the cleanup section, we have the nuzzle shot and the hand clasp heart shot, where even though there's actually a big animation error in the final frame where Lake's shoulder and chest gap line disappears between the clasp and the rest of the hands, I still say the shot works, especially with this nuzzle shot where the sweetness overload makes my heart melt every single time. Yes, of course, I wish I fixed that error. I felt so annoyed when I noticed it for the first time, but I chose to keep it in there since, one, I can't replace the original YouTube upload file with a different video file in a way that doesn't delete the great comments and views I already have, and two, because it serves as a reminder for me to keep going, that I can always and will get better at noticing these errors while trying to bring the stories I want to tell to life. But yeah, cleanup was worked on from the beginning of October to quite literally, January 4th or 5th. Yeah, right up to the final day. Then I exported the animation a few more times to fix some errors, got it into Premiere Pro, added the credit sequence with the trial font and my artwork, which you can find on my Instagram if you want a better look at it. I loved drawing that sleepy artwork. I love the colors. I love the vibe. I love the Alan Dracula plushie. I love this show and its characters so much. And I promise, there's great stuff to this show aside from just shipping. The show is great. The backgrounds are beautiful. The animation is good. The voice acting is peak. The music is amazing. And the characters themselves are fantastic. And I don't need Jesse and Lake to be in a romantic relationship to love them. Lake is one of my favorite animated characters of all time now. I love her story so much. And Jesse, I love almost as much. In fact, I'd argue that as much as I love Lake and the show could have worked with just her by herself, we lose a lot of what's special about Book 2 without Jesse, because the characters complement each other so well, with Jesse helping to make Lake feel more safe and tear down some of her reservations about being alone to stay alive, and Lake helping Jesse stand up for himself more often, and in particular, stand up for others and put his foot down with people where even if he wants them to be his friends, he has to tell them, okay, no, this isn't okay, which he does with the Apex. Again, in case you couldn't tell, one, I'm autistic. Two, I love book 2. And in the case of Jesse and Lake, while they work great as friends, and I think that's perfect for them to end the show as, or at least the season as, again, if you cannot tell why these characters get shipped together, you are insane. Jesse literally broke the logic of the train because his desire to get MT off of it and be with her was that strong.
See? Even my number knows you should come back with me.
Well, if your number thinks so, I guess I should.
If you can't tell why people ship them, but yeah, this has been a quick look at how I made this Infinity Train fan animation. Quick look, I said. This video is longer than every upload I've had so far this year. As of this recording as well, I'm so happy to say this. Just last night, it got shown among other student work at RemCAD's Frames and Games Festival. But yeah, if you're here from that, thank you for checking it out and being curious enough to watch this if you wanted to learn more about what I can do. I will also say this is not the end of Infinity Train content for my channel. Far from it, in fact. I'm still making fan art. I have 2 other video plans that I would love to execute at some point in the future, similar to this style, even if I still have a script to go off of. And I do want to make more Infinity Train fan animations in the future, both shorter ones and maybe 1 or 2 longer ones. We'll see what happens. Before I go, obviously, massive thank you to Owen Dennis, the creator of the show, to the animators and voice actors and crew who helped make it come to life, like my goat, Robbie Damon. Shout out to you, Robbie. I love your stuff. And shout out to Ryan Pequin, who is one of the storyboard artists on the show. He is aware of my fan animation. I did send it to him over Instagram. So if you've seen it now, Ryan, thank you very much. That big thank you to Elibeth Queen, aka Aleve. She is one of the best Infinity Train fan artists who's just like fan art literally helped inspire this whole thing and the sweet vibe I wanted to get out of it. So seriously, Aleve, I'm so happy to have you as a contact now. Your work always makes me smile. Shout out to other great artists in this fandom. And lastly, big special thank you to my RemCAD teacher, Eric Sinha. Eric, I'm sure I'll thank you in person at graduation, but until then, I want you to know, if you're seeing this, that you've been an excellent mentor and friend to me, genuinely, and I'm thankful for everything you've taught me. I'm thankful for you encouraging me to really own all this with American Elephant, because I kept it so disconnected from my academic life for so long, but you helped me get more comfortable with showing that stuff off and figuring out my brand, and I'm excited to see what I can do with this channel in the future, especially since now I know that people like when I talk about some of my hyperfixation, that people really like when I talk about Power Rangers. Those videos are currently like among my top 5 most successful, so that gives me a lot of confidence. And the directions you've pushed me in as an animator and creator have been wonderful, so thank you so much for your help. And thank you for messaging me about the Frames and Games Festival. I would not have known about that unless you told me. With all that said, I'm American Elephant. Call me Kevin. Thanks for stopping by Elephant Power Productions. Thank you for hopefully supporting my animations. I mean, it'd be weird if you were watching this video and didn't. And as I say at the end of every episode for Kev Talks, my video essay series, Amandla Lovu, aka Elephant Power, to all of you. Oh, and remember, no matter how crazy the world gets, keep breaking down doors and knocking out lights, because we're gonna be just fine. Real quick, sorry, one last thing. I literally just finished recording everything for like 52 minutes, but I forgot to add this in. Big shout out to the Mystery Shack website for this incredible Lake plushie. This is so perfect. I love the proportions. I love that they got all the little details from the show. I love how, like, the head shape, it looks like when I will go to do a sketch and I draw the chin too low and wide. So this feels like I could have drawn it in a weird way. I love this so much. If the people who made this plushie are watching this, please make a Jessie plushie. Give her her boy. Make her boyfriend, please. Please. Oh God, she's getting violent. Please. Please.